Hello, and this is our next episode of This is Your Fund Manager speaking. And today we have with us our first female fund manager, and I'm so happy to have Aparna on the show. Aparna, thank you so much for being on the video with us, on the series with us.
Yeah, Shweta, welcome always.
So, a little bit about Aparna. Aparna Shankar is an experienced fund manager. She has almost 3 decades of work experience. Now, she's worked with UTI before and a long stint at SBI now. She's the fund manager and the head of equity PMS at SBI Mutual Fund. And she's one of the top 100 women in finance 2018, which was awarded by Association of International Wealth Management in India, that's AWMI in India. Aparna has got onto the ESG bandwagon much earlier than all of the other fund houses because she's been working on the ESG product since 2016. Whereas today this has become sort of the in thing where all AMCs are launching the funds if they don't have it, and that this is basically the talk of the town today. Aparna also loves interacting with students and educating them. So today's video I'm quite excited about because I'm sure I get to learn a lot of things from Aparna today. And of course, she's an alumni of the IIM Ahmedabad as well. So Aparna, thank you for doing this again. And I'm going to jump right into the questions with today's environment, right? With COVID being how it has changed our lives for better or for worse, it's changed it completely. The investing world is no different. It's changed completely the way we invest, whether it's, having technology, us adapt technology much faster, as working from homes being the norm. How do you think it's changed investing?
Okay, so Shweta, first of all, thank you so much for your time. I mean, for your invitation to interview me. And let me, take this opportunity to mention that I have not jumped into a bandwagon. I think we started the bandwagon. So we were the first fund house to start with the ESG compliant thematic fund. As everybody knows, ESG stands for environment, social, and governance factors. So in July 2016, this fund which I am managing currently, which is SBI Growth with Values portfolio. The values stand for the ESG compliance of the fund. Was started with ESG as a backbone of the fund philosophy. So just to mention that till now, I think till last 3 months, there were only two funds which were first one is SBI Growth with Values portfolio is 100% ESG compliant. The second fund was Tata Mutual Fund, which was more of a Sharia compliant, but it was also included into ESG compliant fund. Only two funds were ESG based funds. Now we have 6 new launches in last 3 months. So I'm sure whether you should thank the pandemic situations or how is it that you have made kind of more alive to the ESG factors. But as we differentiate, I say at SBI Mutual Fund, this is ingrained in us now. As a whole fund house, we respect the ESG factors for when we are investing in any of the company. So it's not only restricted to the fund which I manage, but it is for the whole fund house as an institution. We are following ESG states. On your question about how has the world has changed after COVID and especially the investing world, I think this pandemic has affected lives and livelihoods everywhere. So I feel this is the maybe the at least as I remember or have I read for different centuries, this would be the first such a calamity which has affected the whole world. Maybe the degree is different, but all parts of the world are affected by this calamity. Okay, so for this pandemic times has been unique or maybe extraordinary in innumerable ways. I mean, its impact is just not restricted to the life or humanity, but it has an economic and social impact, which will flow through various different, I mean, multiple generations. That's what I foresee in these times. And I feel we feel that this is a kind of a defining moment for environmental, social, and governance related issues. And there is more responsibility. I mean, that is what I can witness in the investing world also. Specifically for the world of investing, I don't think it would have changed things materially, because if you go according to the philosophies what we follow as investment managers, is that you always look at of course management is the most important factor I see in any business. But apart from management, you also look at what are the challenges the businesses are facing. So are they facing challenges which are related aspects, regulatory risk, or government related risk, or the environment related risk? So these were all looked at, but now I think we are looking at with a more microscopic intentions, or maybe the yeah, with more microscopic parameters. And ESG. So just to give you a little background about the fund which I manage, which is a ESG compliant fund. So what we do is that there are different various ways of adopting a ESG investment philosophy. The philosophy which we follow is my experience philosophy is that we do not invest in few sectors which we feel are not good for the society, not good socially. We don't invest in tobacco, liquor, weaponry, or maybe adult porn. These kind of sectors we don't pesticides. These are the sectors which we don't invest. There is a positive standards ESG team also, where those funds invest only in the companies which are contributing positive to the society. So that is a major difference. I mean, these are two different themes where ESG funds are run across globe. We follow negative screening thematic philosophy. So when you are investing in a business, why I'm saying that the investing has not may not have changed much is that you have always been cognizant about these factors. When I say about ESG, I always say that we also follow those kind of traditional or conventional parameters, like what is the ROE, what is the ROC. So if there is a company, just to give an example, there are two companies in a textile sector. One is reusing. Textile is a very water intensive business, and one of the company, when building a plant itself, takes care of, you are reusing the water. You are treating it a better way. The effluents are treated in a better way. So at the time of setting up the plants, these things are taken care of. Okay, and there is another company which doesn't take care of these things, and which is wants to cut the corners, and should not be spending too much on of capex or something like that. But after a few years, government regulations come up, so that the second company has to add these kind of facilities. So it's an additional cost for that. So that is how you differentiate between the two different management or two different businesses. One has already taken a forward looking visionary steps and build all those at the time of building the plant, while the other company does it at a later date at a higher cost. So just to give you a small example about how you differentiate between two different businesses.
Yeah, because my next question to you was going to be, how do you differentiate between a good business and a business that you can invest in, like an investable business?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, in a day in day out, we keep evaluating this. In a investment parlance, I would say that good business is any business which is sort of glamorous, sort of white collar, don't make your hands dirty and you are kind of proud to talk about and all that. But uh, so there would be many businesses like I can say Britannia is a good business. I mean they make cookies and they it's almost everything is veg and all that, and not much uh, mm, what should I say? Uh, so, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a good business. You would love to own such kind of businesses. Maybe Nestle is a good business. You would love to own such kind of, but the valuations are so high.
Yeah.
And what is the investable business? Investable business is any business where you can make above average returns, risk reward ratio favorable in when you are investing, the risk reward ratio has to be favorable, and it is in line with the expectations of the investors, the mandate which the investor has given you. So that is a investable business. So investable business can be any business, kind of a tannery business is also can be an investable business. If you feel that the business is going to give you better returns than any other, many other stocks, so it's a good investable business. And we are so investment managers' responsibility is to make those kind of returns, above average returns, by investing in the potentially good business which are going to give you better returns. Your mandate is not to invest in glamorous or white collared or very good businesses kind of thing. Your mandate is to make money. That is your mandate. I think you have to be always cognizant about it.
So, okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sort of. But this gives me another question. How important is profit in a business in an environment where we are today, where we see lots of businesses, big businesses in the country, where they burn cash, whether it's not necessarily bootstrapped businesses, but businesses which raise funds. They're not making profits, but they have a huge customer base. How would you say that is an investable business for you?
I think largely you are referring to BSFI sector. So personally, I don't like these businesses because every
It could be
second or
any
third
sector.
year.
It could be, I give you an example. It could be like a Flipkart, for example. It could be anything where they're burning cash, which they've not earned, and profits are a little later, because this is a question that I've always had, and we've kept discussing and debating, where, even a small business in India. Okay, so I come from a Marwadi family, so we are a business family, and profit is very, very important. So when we see businesses like a Flipkart that is burning cash and not making profits for years, but has a huge customer base, and you can't basically live without that business, right? Um, so how would you invest in that?
Why not? I mean, see, if you're if the business is making a profit, or is it in that phase of making a profit, is what you have to evaluate. Okay, so now if Flipkart is listed, it comes for listing. I'm sure I will like any other Fangs or the smart stocks. I mean, Fangs. I mean, they had not made profits in the earlier days.
Yeah,
Okay, even if you look at Google, the value capture the Google has done. I mean, the kind of investment they did for many years, and now the kind of value capture they do. I mean, you just can't do without Google. So
correct.
that pole-like position the business is generating. I think that is that business strength. But on the other side, to create that pole-like position, you have to keep investing in that business so much that the profits. Even if you kind of paint down the profits in next few years, that is always rolling forward in for the
Yeah,
next phase of the few years. So
correct.
that could be a position. I mean, why even Flipkart? You talk about Reliance. I mean, the money they spent in telecom in last few years. I mean, we always had a question about capital allocation
Yeah,
of the company, and now they are in kind of a whole like position. I mean, the value created, apart from the consumer getting benefited by the value creation, I think this is the one company which has been benefited by the value creation, even by investing. So there is a difference between what are you investing into, whether, and the timeline is getting delayed for that investment converting into free cash flows or maybe profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could be one reason, but then it will be a good business because you are going to make returns by investing in that business, and the valuation and the price performance is going to give you return for your investment.
Right.
So that's another valid point. I mean, we are not in the business. We are not. Our mandate is not to run a business. So we are not entrepreneurs, or we are not business owners. We are the stock owners. I mean, our mandate is to make money on the stock. Nobody is going to give us money to run the business. We are not in that. There is a huge differentiation between that.
Right. So tell me now, we spoke about free cash flows and profits, So how relevant do you think is P in today's investing? Because whenever somebody wants to invest, the first thing they would look at is the P ratio, right? So what other ratios that you would recommend that investors see, and how relevant do you think is P in today's world itself?
See, P is a one nomenclature to understand whether the business is attractive or not. But I think those were the very, very conventional and old school kind of things. I mean, the relevance of those valuation parameters is still valid, but the degree of the relevance has gone down. So for the SBI Growth with Values portfolio, what we look at, the four most important things we look at is that whether the management is capable of running the business, whether the business is scalable, and whether the growth is profitable. So these are the three things, and the fourth factors is it ESG compliant? I mean, is it following the good policies of all these three factors? Whether it is good governance, good social responsibility, and you are alive to the environmental risk. So these four factors. So and when I kind of start building a portfolio based on these four important factors, I tend to go little lenient on the valuations, because the outcome of doing this is most of the times it becomes that you are investing in a leader of that sub industry. Okay, if you are investing in a leader of that sub industry, so valuations will be at a much higher level than the challenger company in that industry. Plus, the as I said, the value capture will be higher in that by that company. Plus, the profitability, it will be a leader in that profitability segment also. So you are a price you are not a price taker, you are a price maker. So that's the differentiation. So for this fund, at least I go a little lenient on P. And some other example I would like to quote is that as a fund house, we are invested into DMart. I mean, DMart is at 100 times P. You would not invest if you only go look at P. But these are the some businesses, something similar like Flipkart, but they are making positive cash flows. And these are the some businesses which will be there. The longevity of the business is huge. I mean, if you look at even 10 years down the line, there will be huge scope for this company to penetrate and grow geographically. And they had the price makers. I mean, they have understood how do you keep the cost under control. I think it's very difficult for any other business house to compete with demand on that level. So at 100p, the stock is still kind of a investable company.
Right. So this
So
brings me to,
it all depends upon what kind of mandate you are running. I mean,
right.
finally, investor is always happy about making returns, and if you are able to give them better returns, I think they will be more happy.
Yeah, so I think at the return, when we're talking about returns, so what is the kind of returns that equity investors should expect in the next coming decades? Because if you see the last few decades, the returns have been continuously coming down very consistently. So whether it was, for maybe in the 90s, it was 20%, in the 2000s, maybe it was 15%, or slightly higher. And it's consistently coming down. So when I speak to investors now, I don't know why, but everybody seems to be linked to this 15% return, saying 15% return on equity we should get. Even advisors, for that matter, I speak to advisors, they say, 15% you will get on equity. But last decade, if you see, equity hasn't given 15% returns. So my first question is, for the next few decades, because we do recommend that investors in equity should continue to stay invested for decades. What return should they expect? And should they expect higher returns in ESG-based funds? Because, like you mentioned, they are the price makers, right? So, would that be a factor that gives ESG funds an edge? What are your thoughts?
So I would not like to give you any kind of a static number for what kind of returns you should expect in next decade. If you even look at history, if you plot that returns against the inflation, I think there will be a premium of 4 to 5% across the time periods. So if you had got 20% kind of return in some period of time, there would have inflation would have been in the 12% or 13% kind of thing,
Right.
or maybe a 25 to 30% premium over the inflation. I think that's the way you should look at it. So in the current times, and even for the last few years, we have been saying this is that you should able to generate equity returns. We are mandated to generate equity returns in excess of what is the other benchmark. Other benchmark is the bank deposits. So if bank deposits were giving you 7-8%, we were always talking that we would able to generate at least 3 to 4% better returns than the bank deposits.
Right.
So even equity returns are tax efficient. I mean, if you include the tax liability on the bank deposit interest rates, that will still go down to 5-6%. So we were talking about 7-8%, and this 10%, 12%, 15% are kind of outlier kind of returns. I mean, we don't know whether you can repeat those kind of returns in next decade or so.
Yeah.
But you should always have a benchmark. What are the alternative investment opportunities do you have? So if somebody has an alternate investment opportunity to invest in a real estate, why not? I mean, if they are so sure about generating a 20% plus return, I mean, it's your decision. You must go for that, rather than giving that mandate to some investment manager who's cautious and who is managing the risk, and saying that okay, we'll able to generate only 3 to 4% better returns than the bank deposits.
Right.
So, but largely in India, at least, this is a very this kind of skills are available only in some small subset of people who can generate that kind of return. But for the larger investor base, I think fixed deposit of bank deposits are the benchmarks to look at. And if any equity fund or hybrid funds are able to generate better returns than that option you should always explore.
Okay, so your views on asset allocation. I know I'm asking an equity fund manager about asset allocation, but your views on asset allocation, and particularly gold, because women tend to be biased towards gold. So I want your view, not just as a fund manager, but as a woman as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I totally agree. Women tend to be biased to gold, but they don't look at gold as an investment. They look at gold. I mean, they don't trade in and trade out so much. At least Indian women may not be doing so much of trading in and out of the gold. It's more like Stridhan, it's like a family silver, a family gold, or something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether Indian women look at gold as a investment option. But I have always been suggesting investors to look at gold, and gold as an additional, I mean, supportive investment avenue for their portfolios. So I have been always suggesting to invest 10 to 20%, 10 to 15% of their total investable funds into gold. Even in the current times, I think gold has recently, kind of corrected, and it's almost at 1800 USD per this thing. And I'm not an expert in gold investments, but experts are expect that it will run to 2300 or so. So there is still good 20-25% returns can be made through gold as investment. But I would always also suggest that instead of buying gold physically, go for gold as a mutual fund investment, or ETFs or some sort of that, which is tradable, liquid, and you don't have to pay anything to store that. Plus, it is always safe. So you must have gold as a portion of your investment, and maybe 10 to 15%, depending on the times in which you are investing, would be a good allocation to gold.
Okay. And
Maybe that is because I am a woman, I am fond of gold, but I have invested in gold in through mutual funds only, not physical gold.
Okay. So good advice for women there and who want to own gold. And as a woman fund manager, I have my last question for you. How is it being a woman in a man's world, basically? Mutual fund industry is pretty much a man's domain. So how is it being a woman there? And also your advice for women who aspire to be in this industry?
So first of all, let me say this, that it's no more men's domain. I mean, if you would have made this statement 10 years back, I would have said yes, because I would have been the only one
Mm-hmm.
feminine gender in the whole, full of maybe fund managers and analysts in a room meeting the company.
Yeah, but
But
that
now,
still hasn't
in
changed
last
so much, Aparna. In fact, if you see conferences, speakers, maybe more women have started attending, I think. But women leaders, I still see very few, more as an exception than as a norm. So yeah, I think that is to change. And I think we're looking forward to your advice for young women aspirants so that that changes. And I know you are come on a
okay.
lot of these panels, so maybe you'll
Yeah.
differ there. But I see a lot of women in the audience that has changed. Earlier, that would be very few women attending. Now we even see women on the panel. Hopefully, at least one woman. But yeah, that's changing. You're right, it's changing. But yeah, I think leaders like you can change that even more and give advice and mentor women and change that.
Yeah, sure. So I think it is something related to our Indian culture also. I think this is a journey, and I am happy that I have seen the generations, moving from that not allowing girls to first of all study,
Sorry, yeah.
and then take up a
Work, yeah.
profession, but that has changed. And I think it's also more to about Indian culture, because that journey would have been faster in some other kind of developed markets, but in India it could be a slow journey. So I don't expect too much out of this, unless and until a person, so it depends upon yourself. How do you want to address it? So for me, it's not that I have always been like this. I would say that more than a woman, I am a working mother. All my, though I was part of mutual fund industry in the early 90s also, but my as a mainstream profession, I am in the industry for last 15 years. So that has come after I have become mother. I mean, I remember my son was 1 year old, and when I finished my MBA. So I think it's more has to come from within. uh, you keep that light, inside you burning, so that you are able to face. And I mind you, I mean, people are really good. I have not faced any untoward incidents ever in all this my 35 years of career, which says that okay, no, as a woman I have to take a back seat. It is just your guts, your confidence, and your courage, how you want to go forward. I think nothing should stop you. At least gender should not stop you from taking up this kind of challenging roles. At our SBI mutual fund, there are many department head who are women. I am so proud of it. I used to be proud of it a few years back that I used to say, okay, I'm one of the 10 fund managers, 10 female fund managers in India. So now I say, okay, I am one of 100 top women in India. So that's in 10 years, if it
Yes.
has become 10 times, in next 5 years, I think it should uh, become at least 10 times more than that.
Yeah.
So I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic, but it is within you. I mean, nobody is stopping you. It is only you yourself stopping yourself. That's all. That's my learning.
Okay, so advice for aspirants, keep that fire burning and nobody's stopping you, only you're stopping yourself. So be brave and move on. There are lots of
Yeah,
people that ready to guide you, help you. So yes,
yeah. There are so many CAs. Why I don't understand why all those at least 50% of CAs, with female CAs convert into this financial industry. It's not a, but now the conditions are so maybe being CA is a better option than being a fund manager.
okay. So on that note, thank you so much, Aparna. Thanks for being with us today and thanks for all your words of wisdom. Uh, it was a pleasure having
Thanks a
you.
lot, Shweta. Yeah, it was really my pleasure to talk to you. I mean, this was the first interaction. I hope we have many more interactions. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.